What's going on, the digital world? Welcome back to another episode of the Web Buzz Podcast. Taking a few weeks off. Let Roger come down to Miami, get a little bit of a suntan, as much of a suntan as we could when we were in for half a week. But we did take a little bit of a time off here at the start of the month. Enjoyed some holidays. I was traveling, a couple other things going on, but good to see you back, Roger. I know you had an eventful day and evening last night. So good to see you sitting in that chair today.
Oh yeah, man. It was a late night, but not the type of late nights that you would think, right?
Yeah.
A late night at the ER. So we had a little incident here with one of my little girls got injured, and she's fine now, but yeah, it was a little eventful around here.
Absolutely. So it was good to hear that she's doing okay. And whatnot, but our thoughts go out to her on that. But that being said, we've got a heck of a show today, and I don't want to take too long before we get into it, but we've got a really, really awesome guest here with us today, and I think it's going to be something that a lot of you guys are going to want to probably save this episode, save the tab. We'll send it out like we always do afterwards. Save it and go back, because I have a feeling I don't think I'm going to be able to hit the gold bar button fast enough today with the amount of gold bars that are going to fly. So if you're tuning in live, if you're jumping in live anywhere, go ahead and let us know in the comments that you're here and whatnot. But anything you want to say before we introduce our guest, Roger?
Yeah, no. I'm super stoked to have this particular guest. Like I said, he's like you said, he's been kind of a wealth of knowledge just in the community overall. I've heard a ton of great things about him. Obviously, we do a little bit of our research and kind of saw some stuff that he has going on. So we're really excited to kind of share that. And this kind of puts it in perspective where we're heading with this podcast as well, right? And this type of this channel here, because Shawn and I always want to kind of put out as much value as possible, but we're taking a little bit of a turn here and also adding even more, another layer. And this is part of it right here with some interviews with some people that are doing some very, very high level, very cool things out there in real estate. And we want to share that. I think it's worth really kind of helping everybody out, how we can kind of help each other level up and take us to that next level. So anyway, with that said, I'm super stoked to kind of bring this person on.
Absolutely. So our guest today is somebody that many of you might know. You might see him floating around. I mean, he's a little active on social media. You've probably seen him floating around in some different stuff. If you've been to a number of different real estate events, you've probably heard his name or whatnot. But I'm really excited to have him on the show, because Roger and I spent a lot of time on this podcast talking about the power of digital presence, the power of digital marketing. And there's so many things that we can unpack from that. Just this podcast in itself is a form of digital marketing. And funny or not, it was just a handful of weeks ago, our guest, almost dropped his name right there. Our guest was randomly scrolling through Facebook and stumbled on the show and absolutely fell in love with the energy, shot me a private message while we were actually on. We communicated a little bit afterwards, and I loved he actually made the comment like, damn Facebook and their stupid algorithms. This is the first time that I've been seeing it. I mean, we've been doing the show for over a year now, and he's like, this is the first time I've been seeing it. But it just went to show that you never know when an audience member or somebody is going to see something, and that's really the power of digital. Is it can span, it can grow, and people can find it on there. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring on our guest, Mr. Bryce McKinley. Let me go ahead and pull him in. There he is. Bryce, what's going on, my man?
What's going on, gentlemen? I appreciate you. Yeah, that damn algorithm, man. I wish I would have seen it a long time ago, because I am not a marketing guy, and I was watching and I just couldn't stop watching. I time block, right? And what you guys were dropping, a week or two ago, when I seen that, I was just like, this is fire. More people need to see this. If I'm not seeing this, that means other people are missing this. So super glad to be able to connect with you guys, add value to your audience, and hopefully push more people your way, because you guys got great content. So thank you guys, for both of you, Shawn, Roger, for having me on. And I'm excited to pour into your audience and share some of the stuff that I've already been sharing with my audience with you guys. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We are ecstatic to have you on. I'm curious to hear some of the stuff. I know you and I have been chatting over the last couple of weeks, and it's been little nuggets of stuff. And I kept telling Roger, I can't wait for the episode. We're not doing an episode next week, and we'll probably take another week off through the Christmas stuff. But I told him, I said, we are doing this episode. There's no canceling. I want to make sure that we get this out. So, but before we get into any of the juice, and not that what I'm about to ask you isn't juice, because I think there's a lot of power in that.
Sure.
But I hear this a lot. Roger hears this a lot. Sometimes we get told, it's easy for you guys because, you like came out of your parents' womb and you were the perfect thing for this business.
Yeah.
And it's so far from the truth, right? And you've got a story in itself. You weren't where you are today when you started, and it's taken some time and it's taken some bumps and there's been some setbacks. And if you could just introduce a little bit to the audience out there of your background, where you came from, and what kind of got you to where you're at now, and then maybe we can hit a little bit on what does today look like in Bryce McKinley's world with your business, the amount of deals you're doing, a lot in the real estate space. So just kind of take them through that journey.
Yeah, thank you for letting me share that. So for those of you that don't know who I am, I've been a Fortune 500 business consultant for over 10 plus years. I am a international keynote speaker. I am an international best-selling author 6 times over. But my life hasn't always been so blessed. My journey into sales and real estate started out at a very young age. I grew up pretty darn poor. My parents, were on welfare. My dad was working 2 and 3 jobs. My mom was a stay-at-home mom with little side gigs. And so for me, I always had this drive and determination that I was not going to leave that legacy for the people behind me, whether it was my children, colleagues, whatever that was. And I'll never forget, my journey into real estate actually started at the age of 8 years old. And that would be the first and last time that I would ever really be fired from a job. And what I mean by that is I grew up in Northern Illinois, and in Illinois, you had to be 10 years old to have a paper route. But if you don't know me and you've never met me, you wouldn't know by sitting here on a camera, know that I'm 6'5", I'm 235 pounds. I'm a huge man. And I've always been a big guy. And so even at 8 years old, I looked like I was 10, 11, 12 years old. And so I got a paper route. And it was about 2 or 3 weeks in, Shawn, that Karen, and that was her name, her real name, not the Karen, but her name was Karen. Karen came over. She was my route manager, sat my parents and I down, and she said that we would have to part ways because I wasn't old enough and the responsibilities. And I remember looking at her and looking at my dad, looking at her, looking at my dad, and just my mind racing. Like, I'd been making really good money these last few weeks. I was doing more in sales and marketing my paper route to the community and making more money than my parents were. And I was just ecstatic to be able to contribute. And I looked at him, and I'll never forget, I said, obviously you thought that I was doing a great job, and my parents thought that I was doing a great job. So why don't we just put the route in their name? And when I turn 10, give me more responsibilities if I do a great job. Inevitably, they said yes. And by the age of 10, I had like 5 paper routes. I was doing very well at 10 years old, making a couple $100 a week. That was good money, 30 years ago, 40
without
years
aging
ago.
ourselves.
I'm old. No, I'm just kidding. You're only as old as you are when you stop living, man. So for the next several years, I had multiple paper routes. Unfortunately, my parents went through a divorce. I ended up hanging out with the wrong crowd, getting involved in drugs and gangs, and facing some pretty hefty criminal charges. And by the grace of God, man, I had no charges that stuck. I was acquitted of all those charges. And my uncle took me by the ear and moved me to Davenport, Iowa, where I started detailing cars at a car dealership. And I figured if I could sell dope to, crackheads in Chicago, I could sell trucks to guys in Iowa, right? That was kind of my mentality. So I begged him and begged him and begged him for an opportunity. And I'll never forget, it was actually about this time back then, about a week before my birthday, which is Christmas Eve, by the way. So that always comes first. Don't ever forget it. It was about this time back when I was 17 years old. And he finally said, in the middle of a blizzard, it was him, myself, and the little old lady that came in to work the back office. None of the salesmen showed up. He's like, if you can sell a car today, I'll put you on the team next week. I went to work. I sold 3 cars. I sold 2 trucks and an Explorer, a Ford Explorer that day. And I was hooked because within, a week, I had been paid in excess of $10,000 by working just a couple of hours one day. I was hooked with sales and marketing. And so I know we're going to dig into marketing, but I can't stress enough. It's so vitally important that you understand those 2 components, the art of conversation and marketing. Those are the 2 things you should focus on before you focus and master anything in business. And that's what I did. And I went to work. And over the next 2.5 years, I'd become the #1 car salesman in the world with Ford Motor Company. They have a national competition where it's like a mock test drive. They call it a walk-around competition. Nobody's ever been to that twice. I've been there 4 times. I won it twice, and I got second place twice. And so I fell in love with the marketing of features and benefits to solve people's problems, and then being the connector in between that, facilitated that in the sales arena. And I was later recruited out of my dealership at age 22. Later picked up by Nissan, Toyota, and Honda, traveled the world teaching my 7 steps to business and my 5 steps to every conversation. And it was amazing, tens of millions of dollars each year, had, 6 or 7, 8 and 7 and 8 figure contracts at a very young age. And then unfortunately, going through a crazy marriage where she had a baby with someone else, and because we had an open relationship, like this wasn't something that we didn't know about. There wasn't any infidelity. It was intentional at the time with my beliefs and everything at the time. She just didn't handle it well. And by Friday, June 13, 2008, that was in 06. By Friday, June 13, 2008, she essentially committed suicide. Mm. And I was devastated. I mean, her mom had been my Sunday school teacher when I was a kid growing up. So I've known her all my life. She was like my Bonnie to Clyde, right? And this is kind of how I got into real estate, because over the next 2.5 years between 2008 and 2010, I would snort and drink up my nose and in a bottle close to $80 million, 6 or 7 corporate, 7 and 8 figure contracts, and lose everything. I ended up on the street for about 1.5 years, homeless. And in that 2-year period, had met a girl, had a baby. It was just a crazy time period in my life. And I'll never forget, after winning sole custody of my son, sobering up in 2010, just before he was born, I had this second chance at life, and I started hustling and started grinding, and I just didn't think I could do it. So while we're going to talk about sales and marketing and real estate today, I want to give you hope. Like, if you're going through it, this is one of the toughest times of the year. There is always light at the end of the tunnel. There is always light casting the shadow that you're in right now. And I just want to encourage you guys to push, because I didn't. And September 28, 2011, literally 10 years ago this year, the same 40 cal that sits next to my bed tonight had never jammed before, hasn't jammed since. But that night, it jammed 3 times. That's wow. Right. Once, not twice, but 3 times. And I knew that I had a greater purpose. I just didn't know what it was. I got mad at God and kind of got angry and gave him this ultimatum, like, bro, show the F up. If you are half of what you say you are and anything they say you are, show up. And wouldn't you know it, within 48 hours, I had an old client wire me $20,000 from an old contract. They found that they owed me money. I had a 1-bedroom apartment given to me basically from an apartment complex. They found an old application. And then within a week of that time frame, I don't remember the specifics, but within a week or 2, I was at the library looking at YouTube, just like we all get sucked into like YouTube or Facebook ads, right? I was looking for a job and I got sucked into this, like, make money from home, no money out of pocket, use other money to do real estate. And I'm like, sounds too good to be true, but I'll watch another video. So I watched the second video on YouTube, and then I watched a third. And the difference between those of us that are at the top where most of you want to be and the ones that are over here wishing and dreaming are the gunna. And my son once said, the gun that killed the most people is the gunna. You're gonna do this, you're gonna do that. Well, you're not gonna do anything unless you just do it and be that person today that gets those results tomorrow. And so I knew after that third YouTube video, like, this is real. If that moron on the YouTube video, and I don't remember who it was, if that guy can do it, I can do it, right? Yep. And so I took action. And within the next 30 days, I had been cold calling FSBOs for sale by owners, from FSBO.com, from Trulia, from Zillow, right? And I contracted 23 houses. And I'm like, this is real. Now, don't get me wrong. I only closed like 5 of those because I didn't have a clue about the business at the time. But I made more money in that 30 days than I had done in a long time. And I was hooked. I got plugged into Mastermind. I hired a coach and partnered with a company here in Dallas that was looking for acquisitions persons, pitched them my consult, became a minority partner in my third technical month, which was actually my second month of marketing. Contracted 37 houses and closed 35 of those 37. And that's when I knew that I had something special, and we went to work. And so you fast forward now 9.5 years. 4 years ago, I actually left that company, branched off and did my own thing, and even still maintain that average of what we were doing. And so now, fast forward 10 years, we're closing 30, 40 transactions a month in each market that we're in. So we're doing 150, 160 transactions a month, between 4 or 5 markets, and completely virtual, all by way of marketing and conversations. And just been super blessed beyond my wildest dreams.
Well, I'm going to say, I'm glad the gun jammed. I'm a former military, right? Former military active on the Marine Corps side of things. I never want a weapon to jam, but in that case.
Well, and so and thank you for your service, Shawn. Like, this was a Springfield Armory 40 cal XD. They don't jam. That's a good weapon. 3 times.
I mean, it just goes to show that, I love how you put it, like, there was definitely a bigger picture out there, right? A bigger purpose. But I think the key, if you guys are listening to really, and we say this all the time, and it's easy to say, but just look at, what Bryce went through. And then the key element was just doing it, right? Just taking the action. I didn't hear anywhere in that story, well, the YouTube video sounded cool. It looked too easy to be, too good to be true, kind of looked easy. But this, right? Or but that. And I love the gonna do, the number one gun that's killed anybody. Gonna do. Instead, it was a different attitude, right? It was like, hey, if that moron, no disrespect, but if that guy can do it, or that gal can do it, I can. Right? There's no reason why we can't. So, Roger, anything before I shift us here and get into some specifics on some digital marketing, because he's speaking my language, sales and marketing.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So he's going down that route. I love it. I think it's going to be really good. But Bryce, man, I had no idea, right? It's like I didn't know your full story. So first of all, I want to say thank you for sharing it. That's a powerful, very powerful story. Because everybody, as powerful as that was, as just there's a lot in there, right? But we all face our demons in a way, right? It's like we all face our situations. And they're all different. They're all over the spectrum of what it is. So I think you coming out and being very open about it when it is a business podcast, right? A marketing podcast, but at the same time, that aspect is huge because that's the mindset portion, right? It's like, what have you gone with? What are you fighting with? What do you have to get over in regards to your mindset to get clear and then dominate in your industry, right? In your business, because very, very hard if you're not clear, right? So I appreciate that. I'll leave it at there. I know we're going to jump into some things, but man, so happy to have you here. And like Shawn said, I'm very happy that didn't go off, and you're adding a lot of value to not only this community, but to the world, man. So I appreciate it.
Appreciate that, gentlemen. Yeah, you know, I just look at it like this. I mean, the human scientists put a label on us, Homo sapiens, right? Like we're human beings, but most of us just go through life human doing. We've got to be the person today that gets the results tomorrow. So you want to be a millionaire? Like millionaires wake up at 4 and 5 in the morning. They go to bed at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. They have other people doing the things that they're not great at, you know? And so I just want to encourage, you know, you guys and anyone listening at the sound of my voice, start being the human that you're called to be instead of just doing the things that you think is right. Because we're not human doings, we're human beings. So
Love that. So let's go back to, I was laughing when you were telling the part of the story with the paper route, because that's how I got, my father grew up with a paper route. And I think that was like, it was a must do for him. His oldest son was going to have a paper route.
yeah.
But go back to that point. What was it about the paper route that suddenly tripped something that, I mean, obviously there's money, but what do you think it was at that time that kind of like got you hooked on this concept of really it's just language, right? In marketing and sales, and just this aspect of connecting what I've got with what they want.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, for me, it's several things. It started with that hunger and desire, right? And when I say hunger, the first thing that comes to my mind is Les Brown. You know, he and I have spoke on many stages together, done events together. We've wrote a book together, things like that. And Les Brown says it best, like, you got to be hungry, right? And that was the first factor. But that why factor, that hunger factor only lasts so long. You have to find the things that work and then expound upon them. And for me, it was just a great opportunity to exercise conversation. And you know, my backstory before what I shared, I grew up in a UPC Pentecostal church, like a very strict religious church where they're like pitching you hellfire and brimstones if you don't get saved. Almost like cult-like, right? Like afraid to look at a TV and you're going to hell. Those are great persuasion artists up there on the platform and on the stage speaking. And I grew up studying and admiring these pastors because that's what we were taught. And so I've carried those transferable skills into everything I've ever done. And one of those is studying the masters, right? And that's how I became the #1 car salesman in the world and held that for 10 plus years and recruited out of my dealership. And then in real estate, doing things that nobody's ever even thought of or heard of, just because I've studied the masters and I implement and take action. And one of the things, you know, that also resonated there was that conversation piece. I'll never forget, I used to get my papers dropped on this corner, and on the corner of this like route, there was like a horse farm right in the middle of the city. And so me and my brother would like sit there and look at the horses, eat the little berries on the bush, and like almost like old fashioned style. Like you can picture that, right? And I'll never forget, every day the little old lady on the other corner would come outside about the same time and she would let out her dog. And I just started saying hi to her. Hey, how's your day going? What's your name? I'll never forget. Her name was Betty. Betty Johnson was her name, ironically. The most whitest old person lady's name you could think of. I only know that because her grandson, I later found out years later, was the same like class. I grew up going to school with them. But I'll never forget, she lived on this corner and she was the nicest old lady. She would ask me and my brother if we wanted water, and we would talk to her about her dog. Can we pet the dog? And we just built this relationship by asking questions. And next thing you know, she went from just being the lady on the corner to she was buying the weekend, Sunday and Saturday paper. And then she went to all week long and having a daily subscription. And then she went to paying in the office. So I didn't have to knock on her door and collect. She just auto paid, which actually paid me more per paper on delivery. And when I started piecing that together over that like first year and a half of the relationship that I built, and I started doing the same thing just over and over and over. Next thing you know, 5 paper routes later, everybody's paying in office. So I'm making 3 and 4 times what the average paper boy is, because I didn't have to knock on the door and collect the money. I just had to turn money in at the end of 2 weeks, and it was a lot less because they were paid in office, right? Or they would cut me a check. And so for me, I think that going back to that and what resonated between conversations and marketing was the relationship that marries the two. And I talk about that in my book about, the 5 steps of every conversation. And first step is, warming with form, family, occupation, recreation, motivation. You'll never solve someone's motivation if you don't know what they're for, right? And a lot of people have heard warm with Ford, F-O-R-D. If you've ever been in sales, that's mine. Ford Motor Company, copyrighted. And now I changed it to form, F-O-R-M. Right. And so if you've ever heard those acronyms, that's part of that selling and marketing process that I teach. I've just had to adapt and shift it, but I wouldn't change it because it works. And so, 2 doors down, I remember this guy had Camaros out front, and he ended up giving me like a $500 Christmas tip one year. He became my new best friend. And so now I've got 2 old people, this old guy and this old lady on my route. And next thing you know, they referred the lady in between them and the other one on the other side. And I found that by building these relationships and adding value to their time, their money, and their family, I could get whatever I wanted. Zig Ziglar said it best. If you can add value or help enough people get what they want, you can have anything that you desire. And so that's really where that came from and started at a very young age, just building those relationships and adding value and not asking for anything in return.
So as you look to today, as you're saying that, I'm envisioning all of these elements happening, and it's 100% truth. We talk about this a lot with our clients. Real estate specifically is a relationship-based business. You can't expect somebody to transact the largest transaction of their life, whether that's on the buy or sell side of this thing, without some form of a relationship. That's why Roger laughs. I always convert marketing in the real estate world like dating.
Yeah.
At some point, I've got to get this homeowner to want to marry me. That's do business with me. And I can't just show up day one, cold door knock or cold call and say, hey, you want to get married? It takes some time. It takes that relationship. So in the way that you run your real estate transactions now, and I know Roger's going to want to get into some more technical stuff. I like talking more the human side of things.
Sure.
You're really big with, and I know you teach on this and that kind of stuff. So you can kind of position around that if you need to. But you're really big around leveraging Facebook groups as a lead driver, right? As a lead source. And when I listen to you talk about this, and I've read into some of your stuff, it's like, it's all relationship. You're in these type of groups to build the relationship, which then translates over. What is some of the stuff that you're seeing is working well for you, maybe even for some of your clients? Like, just kind of explain how you've taken this whole relationship concept now and gone digital with it. You're doing business in a lot of places that are all virtual. How is that kind of translating into the, Facebook and even Craigslist side? I know you're big with that.
Yeah, let me kind of step back and say what it's not. Right? We've been doing this for 10 years. So it's not all these other gurus and purus that are adapting in the last 2 years that are like, you should join Facebook groups. There's thousands of people. You're going to get yourself locked up in Facebook jail. You're going to get yourself shut down. You're going to have to get new accounts or build new accounts, which you shouldn't do anyways. And that's on a whole nother topic. But everybody's been teaching it wrong these last 2 or 3 years as they've tried to adapt. We've been doing this for 10 years. I didn't have any money 10 years ago when I was sleeping in my car and I started cold calling and talking to for sale by owners and posting in Facebook groups and on Craigslist and making fake homes on Zillow and Trulia to get buyers to call me, right? Like putting fake addresses and pictures up so that I could get these people to call me so that I could vet them. Nobody's teaching the right way. So it's not any of that, number one. What it is, however, about the relationships is adding value first. And so, one of the things that we teach is join 10, post 10. And what I mean by that is you're going to join 10 Facebook groups every single day, but you're not joining the real estate investor groups. You're not joining your REI meetup groups. You're not joining your, buyers groups, your wholesaler groups, your flip groups, sub 2 groups. You're not. You're wasting your time. You're going to look at 100 people's 100 deals, and 1,000 deals later, you're still sitting there 2 years without anything. You're wasting your time. What I like to say in marketing is go where the people are. Like, why would I fish in an ocean when I can fish in a barrel?
Oh, yes.
Right? Why would I? Why would you do that to yourself? And so if you're in the sound of my voice, like, go where the people are. People are on Craigslist so that they can buy stuff for cheap, so that they can sell stuff for cheap. Well, if they're selling cars and shoes and jackets, you think there's people that probably need to buy or sell a house for cheap? Think about that.
100%.
Facebook groups, garage sales, swap meet, auction, antique, HOA groups, the bad area neighborhoods of your community. Like, they go into these community groups to hang out and bitch and moan about their problems. And guess what? There's going to be a miserable SOB in there that's got problems, that doesn't want to admit it to everybody else, sitting there like a fly on the wall to feel good about themselves. And they raise their hand. Hey, private message, I seen your post. I've got a house to sell. You get 2 or 3 of those a week, you're doing 100% better than everybody else that's spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not thousands, right, on forward-facing marketing when you're going right to where the people are in tough situations and getting maybe less opportunities, but much better qualified. You're getting people that are reaching out to you. And it's set it and forget it when you work the process. And I'm notorious for saying, trust the process. When people reach out to you, they're 10 times more motivated, and the conversation's a lot less hard for you to facilitate. And you can use that to practice. So that way, when you do start buying lists and doing SEO and having VAs, which I don't even recommend scaling in systems until you master the process, and you just get better results that way. And that's why I named my company REI Results. Like, it's about results. Your podcast, top results. Like, it's about getting results. So you got to do that today for what gets the results tomorrow.
Roger, you know what that deserves.
Absolutely, man. Dropping some gold bars, man. Bryce, oh man, you are all over the spectrum on value. I'm taking notes. I can't even keep up with my notes right now. So good stuff. Good stuff.
Roger, I know you got some stuff brewing in your mind.
Go for it.
Go for it.
All right.
No,
so
you get it.
One of the things Bryce said, as I'm kind of listening to you, number one, I love what you said about fishing in the ocean. Why would you fish in an ocean when you can fish in a barrel? That is, I'm always looking for kind of ways to explain certain things to people to get it across. But I kind of see, I really like what you're doing in regards to going to where the people are, right? And we talked a little bit backstage. I was kind of explaining like what my part is in our partnership with me and Shawn and Top Results and how we do it. I focus a lot on SEO, web development, kind of looking at the robot type marketing, right? It's like the actual, but I like what you said, because we actually were very intentional when we set up our company and our packages, right? It's like our first package is called Foundations for a reason. There's certain things you got to get done. To your point, you're not going to go out and start doing advanced SEO and kind of paying, if you are doing ads and spending all that money, if that foundations is not there, you're gonna be disappointed, right? So I really kind of like that portion that you're saying. And I like to kind of hear a little more about what that kind of looked like for you at the beginning. And as you started scaling, building out what the value of maybe teams, right? That's one of the things that we talk about in regards to like, you're probably a solopreneur. You got a family, you have kids, you got all these problems, right? But you have a business as well, and you got to figure it out, right? So I'd like to kind of hear a little bit about the things that you went through at the beginning to get there, and then when it made sense to start building that team, and then the value you got from actually building out that team.
Yeah, thank you. So there's a couple of things that I hear, but I want to go back. I mentioned earlier studying the masters. And when I hear that question, Roger, I think of Ray Kroc. Ray Kroc and his story about McDonald's, there's nobody in this world that can argue that McDonald's has the most successful business model known to man. Like you buy a franchise, you go to university, they help you loan the money, they give you a building, they rent real estate, right? They lease real estate from owners like us, and then they take that real estate and they format it. The fries are always on the left, the bathroom's in the back on the right, and your sandwiches are right in front, and the line behind it is where they make them, right? Every single time. And so when I think of those different foundations and scaling and the value that comes, I have to go back to the basics. And so whether you're just starting out or you've done well and you want to go to the next level, every time, whether you're here or here, you have to get back to the basics. What's working, what's not, where do we change it, and how do we grow? And so when I started this company or started in this industry, I had to look at what I had, which was experience and transferable skills. I had a process that has been proven to work in the automotive industry, in the solar industry, in the home alarms industry, in the home improvement industry. You know, I had contracts with the Pentagon and Chris Voss and, you know, from Never Split the Difference. Like we were doing hostage negotiation. It's the same process setting these things up, whether you're doing hostage negotiations or you're selling siding and windows, it's the same process. So if I'm just changing the widget and calling it real estate, well, the first thing I need to do is master marketing. I need to tell everybody what I do. So where do? I go where the people are. Hey, I'm an real estate investor. Does the message change? Absolutely. With experience, the message changes, but the process doesn't. The systems change, but the process doesn't. You add more systems, you add more people, you delegate, you outsource, and that's how you grow. But the fundamentals of this thing, you know, when I talk in my book about the 7 steps to business, it's like marketing out, leads come in, conversation, transactions happen. And then there's fulfillment or marketing out to buyers, leads come in, and then final fulfillment at retail, right? Whether it's wholesale houses to retail, if it's wholesale shirts to retail, it's the same process. Whether you're wholesaling a house as a solo entrepreneur or you are opening a Old Navy store, it's the same 6 steps. And then the 7th step is rinse and repeat, or title, closing the deal and getting the money and creating a long-lasting business relationship. Those 7 steps don't change from business, industry, to wholesale, to real estate, to flip, anything. Those 7 fundamental steps are the simplest things to where you have to start. Once you've started and you started marketing out and leads coming in, that's when the growth happens. That's when the value add happens to your friends, your family, your business, and the people around you. Because now you learn, you grow, you fail, you either give up or you keep going and adjust and pivot and go back to the drawing board, and it starts back over at step 1. Okay, we're marketing it differently, right? So for me, that's what I think of when you ask me those series of 3 questions, is you have to always get back to the basics, or be willing to, no matter whether you're 1 or 2 deals a year, 1 or 2 deals a month, or 100 deals a month. If you're going to pivot, you're going to change, and you're going to get better, you have to get back to the basics. And so when you do that and create a process and then add systems after the fact, then and only then can you truly scale. I mean, we've sold in the last 10 years, we've sold 3-4 companies because I don't need to manage a software. Like, give me access to it. You guys run it. And we've sold those companies, right? Things like that, to where it's the same process. It's just that real estate's just a different widget. Does that make sense, Roger? Did that answer your question?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It kind of gives what I was kind of trying to drill down and kind of make it very, very obvious that you have to, number one, you have to have that foundation, right? Get back to basic, get all the basics, and really, really master those foundations. Like I like that you have the conversations in marketing, because a lot of times what a lot of people go out there, especially in real estate, or maybe because we work a lot in real estate that I see it, is people think that, you know, mostly beginners, you'll get an online presence going and you sit back, cross your arms and wait for the leads, and it never happens, right? A year goes by, 2 years I've seen, And people are still sitting like this, right? When in reality, I love that we have you on here because you're the one kind of with the proof. Obviously, a lot of more experience at real estate, but Shawn knows this and stuff like that. But it takes some fanatical prospecting, right? To get out there, you have to do everything that's in your toolbox to put your message out there that you exist. And then if you have your foundation set up, when those people go and look for you, they'll find you. They'll find the correct information about you, right? So no, thank you. You did answer that perfectly. Thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And to piggyback that, there's perfect examples. Like it's Christmas time and it's retail season, right? You look at like a JC Penney's and a Sears who are like falling away, and then you look at the Nordstrom's and Macy's and Dillard's, right? And I put Dillard's in there at the same category because when you look at the ones that are at the top, like Macy's and Nordstrom's and Dillard's on their profit bottom line, Dillard's is just a baby. It's 12, 15 years old compared to these stores that have been around forever. But then the ones that have been around forever that are at the bottom, like the Sears and the JCPenney's and the Kmart's, these stores that have closed and or have fallen away, they didn't pivot. Where, I had the contract with Dillard's back 15 years ago when they first started opening stores across the country. And you go into a Dillard's versus a Macy's or a Nordstrom, and those two stores, hey, can I help you find anything? If you even get that, and then you never see them again. You go into a Dillard's, even though it's a little less quality, and they've got some good stuff, right? But they have their own brands that mimic stuff. You go into a Dillard's store, and that sales rep, they've done a good job of marketing the products, one, and two, that sales rep, hey, can I help you find anything? No, I'm just looking. Well, you picked a great place to look. What are you looking for? Right? And they'll engage with you just that little extra bit, and it builds those relationships. And I use that retail example quite often because we all have shopped at one or two of those stores, and it's a completely different customer experience. And that's why this young company is competing with the Macy's and the Nordstroms and their old companies.
I couldn't agree more. But I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second because I know there's some people sitting out there listening going, okay, cool, totally get it. I'm a real estate individual. I'm trying to be like you, Bryce, and all these other, individuals that I hear of. I want to do this virtually. I want to sit on my couch. I want this lifestyle by design. I just want them to sell me their house. I'm not trying to build this lasting relationship with somebody. What do you say to that person? I mean, obviously there's the obvious thing, but what do you say to that person to kind of help them switch that mind around a little bit, that to get them to that point, it's no different than that sales rep in Dillard's. It's like, hey, cool. I got the objection. I'm just here looking. We know that's the objection.
Yeah.
You hinted it really fast.
You hinted at it earlier, right? Like this is one of the biggest decisions of these people's life. If you don't form some sort of connection, like you're shooting yourself in the foot from the very beginning. Number one. Number two, I listened to a podcast yesterday and I just cringed. Like people want to feel heard, seen, and safe. Let me just preface this with that, right? If people feel heard, if people feel seen, and people feel safe, they will move further and closer to you and be more apt to work with you. And I second that with what I said earlier. You'll never truly close a deal or a good deal consistently if you don't first add value to someone's time, money, and family. And with those two components, you have to have some sort of connection. Now, I mentioned I listened to a podcast yesterday, and I was listening to this guy. He's got a couple hundred people. It's actually on Clubhouse, and he's got a couple hundred people on there, and he's telling them, find a commonality, build a relationship with them. And, oh, you like cars? Oh, man, I got a Mustang. What kind of cars? It's like, I call it the German Shepherd effect. And what I mean by that is, like, nobody cares about you. So if they say they like cars and you have a 69 fastback, don't say a jack squat about it. Say, oh, wow, you like cars? What's your favorite year of the Mustang? Like, whether you're a Ford guy or not, like you're going to either say, I really prefer Chevys over Ford, or, I really like that 69 fastback. And you're going to be like, Oh, wow. The 69 fastback, I call it the rack. Repeat, assign a feeling or emotion, and ask a question. You could do this in your marketing by the customer avatar. You can put these types of questions out. Oh, wow. The 69 fastback. Dude, that thing is exciting. Do you have one, or do you just dream of owning one? Right? And when you ask that question, it keeps reeling them in. You don't have to go to their kid's bar mitzvah or their child's wedding. But if they feel like you actually give a stuff about them,
you could throw it out there. Give a shit.
all my Christian friends, like my Bible's sitting literally right there. Jesus also cussed, like, but they don't give a shit about you. This customer doesn't care about you. All they care about is how you're going to solve their problems. Their husband just left, and they're going through a divorce, and they've got 3 kids, and now they've got this 5,000, 2,000, 1,000 square foot house that is overwhelming, and they don't know how to keep up on the maintenance. Or maybe grandma died, and I'm the only child available left in the family, and I'm in college. I can't afford grandma's house. And it's been sitting in my name for 2 years in grandma's name. I don't know anything about airship. Solve my problem. Ask the question, have you titled or did any sort of airship or probate, Shawn? Oh, gosh, no, that's got to be overwhelming. Do you understand how that process works? Well, no, I talked to an attorney. Oh, you talked to an attorney. I'm sure that was overwhelming. Let me ask you, if I could show you a way to sell the house without an attorney and do the probate between you and I'll walk you through it, and it's like $100, would that be beneficial? What? I don't have to pay $6,000 retainer and $250 an hour for the attorney to do what you're going to do for $130 at the county office? Yeah. Please take my house. They give it to you. You know, I mean,
and that, folks, is called dating.
That board, but these are all deals that are closing this week. It's like, gosh, all we did was ask better questions and solve more problems. That's it. That's all we did. And there's relationships formed there. I just, matter of fact, this California deal, literally 72 hours from contract to finding a buyer, and we almost wanted to take it down ourselves because we got it at 300 and ARV 600, and it needs $100,000 in rehab. Like, it's almost a no-brainer. We turned around and just gave it to one of our buyers because it's one of our busiest times of the year. We're solving people's problems at Christmas time, saving them from that tax relief that's coming another month away, you know? And so, I mean, we're going to make $85,000 on this one assignment this week. It took like 2 hours worth of work because we had a conversation. We put the right marketing out that said, oh, I want to work. I want to ask those guys a question, those gals a question. So,
folks, I hope you're picking up
I get excited.
The passion that's behind that. But I just want to drive it home. Like, you guys you hear me talk about it all the time. It's no different than dating. And that's exactly what Bryce is saying right here. That whole conversation was, I can take that and go.
Earlier, Shawn, too. You know, I hate to cut you off. You mentioned the dating thing earlier, and I often use it. Like, if you want to marry that 12, like, dude, I don't care who you are, she's fine, right? You want to marry that 12 and put a ring on it, you better go to base 1 first. You better take her out for dinner. You better understand why she's been a nurse for 12 years and not a stay-at-home mom, but desires that lifestyle. And then you got to go to base 2, and that's not in her pants. That's understanding where her decisions are coming from. And then base 3, it's still not in her pants, gentlemen. It's understanding where her family background and culture is, right? And you build this relationship, and then you take it to Pound Town or home plate, right? It's just like baseball. It's just like dating. You have to go to step 1 or base 1 before you ever score a point. And it's no different in buying a house. It's no different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, man, we can go on forever. I just happened to look up how much time we're already in. I want to respect your time, Bryce. I think we're going to have you back on another couple episodes just to dial deep into very specific topics. But what would you say to that young investor out there? Good portion of our audience. When I say young, it's not necessarily age. It's just time in the business, right? They're kind of getting this thing going. Maybe they're still balancing the day job with trying to figure out how to make this become their primary focus. What would you say to that person out of some encouragement or just kind of guidance? Like, almost like you and I back in the day when we first got started, if we could say it to ourselves again.
Yeah, I would say 2 things. Number 1, stop consuming and start executing. Hands down. You're going to learn faster, and you're going to find a better way to do it than the one that you've probably been consuming, because you learned what works for you. Stop consuming and start executing. Siri, be quiet. Number 2, as soon as you can, hire somebody that's went where you want to go. Hire a coach, hire a mentor. I mean, my partner and I, we spend a couple $1 million a year, I almost said a year, between masterminds and coaches. I've got 4 coaches right now between personal fitness. I'm down 40 pounds in the last 90 days. I've never felt better, right? Like personal fitness coach, a spiritual coach, a personal development coach, and a business coach. Those are my 4 areas. Every month or every 6 months, I'm looking, depending on kind of what that tenure is. And don't be afraid to fire them. I have fired coaches and, hey, I'm not getting anything, or I think that we've, worked enough. I need to find something else. But, number 1, stop consuming and start executing. And number 2, hire a coach or a mentor that's been or is at where you want to go. Those would be the 2 things.
Anything from your end, Roger, you want to throw in here before we sign off?
No, I think if I ask another question, we're going to go another hour. So I'm going to wait till we have him back on. So I'm going to hold that one. I always do this to Shawn. It's like we're getting to the end. I fire off a question. I just lights up another conversation. So what I do want to say is thank you to Bryce for joining us today. I think you added a ton of value to our audience and to me, to Shawn. I've taken a lot of notes. I think there's a lot of ways. A lot of the stuff that you do, that that we talked about backstage, that you're doing with your companies, we help companies do that. We're doing with ours, but just the way to explain it. I mean, you threw out a couple examples of how you explain information. Some of this information can be a little intimidating and complex to explain, but sometimes there's those little tweaks of what examples or what life examples you use to explain something. And man, you gave me a ton. So I want to say thank you for being on. Thank you for sharing your story and some tips and tricks. And yeah, man, looking forward to what you have in the future to kind of share with your community. We're going to be watching, and then hopefully we can have you back on in the future, man.
Let's make it soon. That way we can pick up where we left off. Let's make it early January if you guys got the time. Let's make it happen.
I'm all for it. So, but before we go, I do want to. I know you got the book. I believe it 5 Hour Flip, right?
Yeah, 5hourflip.com.
Where can they get the book at?
Yeah, it's 5hourflip.com. It's literally the no BS step-by-step method to over 10,000 transactions between my partners and our team and I. From step 1 to step 7, all the way through. I can't stress enough. There is no fluff in this thing. You can go look at my Facebook profile, my Instagram. Like, the reviews are astounding, and we thought that we needed to be and do better. That's just the perfectionist in us, and I can't stress that enough. Like, we have had people that have, one of the guys gave us a testimonial. It's like, I've been trying this for 4 years, and I just did what you said, and I got my first deal by reading the book. And so, and then we've got people like Sammy, who's been with us and coaching with us for 4 years or 3.5 years now, almost 4 years. And he read the book, and it was a refresher, and he did like 12 or 13 deals his next month after refreshing on the stuff that he already knows. So highly recommend, not just because my partner and I wrote it, but because it gives you results. 5hourflip.com, and go out there and dig into that. It's $7, you guys. It's the best $7 you'll spend this holiday season.
You can blow that at McDonald's faster.
Exactly.
Instead, put something in you that's gonna help you. And I just happen to realize that I still have it up back here in the background. My favorite quote. It's not that I can and others can't. It's that I have and others haven't. And if I could sum up this entire show into one phrase, it's just that right there. I mean, you guys heard it from Bryce this entire show, and I know there's a couple comments that came in saying awesome show and that kind of stuff. And I've been getting private messages galore on my phone from people as well. But how can they connect with you? I know you got your IG handle up there, Coach Sharpen. Is it the same over on Facebook? Is it something different on Facebook?
Yeah, so my personal profile is Bryce McKinley. Coach Sharpen is my public profile. And then on Instagram, Coach Sharpen. LinkedIn is Bryce McKinley. Before we knew that we could manipulate and change those, they were set up that way. So it's either Bryce McKinley. If you just search Bryce McKinley, you can't miss it. If you Google my name, you can't miss, 3-4 years of content. We have a virtual wholesaling group. It's called Virtual Wholesaling Tips and Techniques, and you can't miss that group. There's 5,000 or 6,000 people in it. There's like 4 years of coaching calls and cold calls in that group that are recorded and streamed in there once or twice a month. We drop new content in there as well. Super active group. It's one of the most active groups in our space that I'm aware of. And so I would highly recommend grabbing the book. And I mean, heck, I think at the end of the prologue, like at the beginning of the book, before you even get started, it's like, if you're ready to just jump in, you can even book a call with someone from our team and see kind of what those next steps are and kind of do a small business analysis right there from the ebook itself. So, yeah.
Sweet. Well, again, thanks for joining us. We will definitely schedule some time to have you back on. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas and New Year's coming up here over the next couple of weeks.
My birthday's first.
And your birthday is first. I'm gonna take a note and make sure.
You know how hard that is competing with baby Jesus growing up, man. You got to.
Hey, that's just an honor to be, sharing that same time frame with them. Is the way I'd look at it.
That's right.
But as always, folks, I tell you guys every week, we look forward to seeing you back here on another episode of the Web Buzz Podcast. We will be probably taking the next couple of weeks off as we get into the holiday season, but we've got a lot of cool things coming at the start of the year, and we'll see you back again. Bryce, thanks for showing up today. Roger, you got anything before we sign off?
No, man. The only thing is happy holidays to everybody out there. Bryce, happy holidays to you as well. But yeah, looking forward. We're going to take a little bit of time off, but we have some things brewing for 2022, man. That's just weird to say every year when we kind of approach the new year, but hopefully all of you guys have been listening. Maybe you have your own masterminds. You've been in our masterminds or whatever it might be. Get out there and plan, because the year's coming. It's not going to stop. So hopefully everybody has planned and ready to go, and hopefully we can add some value to that as we enter the year as well. So looking forward to that.
Absolutely. And I say it to you guys every week, and we mean it. Until next time, here's to your success. We'll see you guys later.
Guys.